Hi, how are you? I'm your host, Grim, or Jay, and without further ado, let's get into the first story. My husband keeps calling me Judy, but that's not my name, and I'm afraid for my life. I'm sitting here trying not to feel foolish. I'm beyond scared to leave my bedroom. I don't know what to do, and I'm at my wits' end. Please help. My husband is just outside the door, and I'm afraid what he'll do if. Oh God, that sounds like he's. Let me explain. Ricky and I were on a hiking trip earlier this week. We were winding along a trail deep in the gorge, and it was just after sunset, so the gorge was dark with shadows. I didn't see anything by myself, but Ricky swore up and down he spotted the lost child. He went off the path with our dog, Gordy. I couldn't keep up. Eventually, he came back, looking anguished. Gordy had apparently ran off snarling into the darkness, and he worried our pit bull was going to maul some lost kid out there. I don't know what's gotten into him, he said. Gordy is a good dog most of the time, but he can be aggressive with strangers coming to our home. It wasn't outside of his realm of possibility for him to bite if he thought we were threatened, though it seemed odd the child would trigger that response. I pressed my husband for a description of this child, and he admitted he didn't take a good look, but the child was naked, and that he mostly thought it was a child because he heard talking. I suggested he may have heard a baby deer or other animal, and wouldn't that be something Gordy would more than likely to chase? And wouldn't the talking kid, answer our shouts? He agreed, but even so. We searched a while before the twilight became too dark and we returned to the cabin we were staying at. The next morning, Gordy was back, scratching at the cabin. We'd lost the spark for hiking, so cut our trip short and we drove back home. That's when things got strange. I have insomnia sometimes, so I stay downstairs watching TV while Ricky sleeps. I was on the sofa, glazed over watching some late night show, when I heard talking. I assumed it was Ricky, but I couldn't make out the words. They sounded too distinct. I called out, and there was no reply. I went back to watching my show, but a while later I heard it start again, so I got up and went to the kitchen. There was a child in our kitchen, or at least that was my first impression in the dim lighting, but it wasn't a child, it was Gordy. Our dog was standing on his hind legs, just in the middle of the room. Shoelaces of drool dribbling from his jaws. He was making these grunting sounds. He stopped the moment I came in and was back on all fours again, looking at me. When I told Ricky, he said I must have been seeing things. But I'm telling you, that dog was on his hind legs trying to talk. Next morning, Ricky kept teasing me about Gordy and saying stuff to our dog like, "Hey Gordy, grab me a cup of coffee, would you?" Or, "Hey, can you answer the phone for me?" Gordy would just stare at him, pretty reasonably. Honestly, he was acting a little strange, but after Ricky's teasing, I was done worrying about the dog, so I left for work. I was on a lunch break when I got these texts from Ricky. Heard talking, thought it was you, but just found Gordy upstairs. Something's wrong. He's making weird noises and thinks he's got me. Sorry for that. And thinks he's got mange. He's losing some skin. On my way to the vet. I called, but Ricky never talks on the phone while driving, so it didn't surprise me that it went to voicemail. I texted him to call me after he got to the vet. After work, I checked my phone. Ricky didn't text. On my way home, I tried calling multiple times to no answer. Ricky wasn't home, and the vet's closed by 6 p.m. So where was my husband? I checked his location on my phone, and to my surprise, he wasn't far, maybe 10 minutes away. So I drove there, on the country road, the route we take to the emergency vet, and at first I didn't see his car anywhere. I finally found it when I noticed some of the grass flattened beside the road, and that his car had veered off into a ditch. By now, the sun was setting. I noticed the driver door open and muddy footprints. Rick's phone was in the passenger seat, but I followed the tracks, but they vanished in the grass and I walked around, calling for Ricky, and stopped when I found Gordy. Or, rather, what was left of Gordy. I should have taken a picture, but I was beyond distressed. It was our Gordy, but something split him in half, like those pig carcasses you see hanging from meat hooks at a slaughterhouse. I could count his ribs. I called the cops. They came and examined the scene of the accident, but after looking at the footprints, concluded it was only Ricky who was out here. They seemed to suspect my husband must have done this to Gordy, even though I told them he was on the way to the vet. I started to tell them about Gordy's weird behavior the night before, but that really made them skeptical. I wanted them to go full crime scene and tape off the area to take photos, but apparently that kind of investigation is not done for dead dogs. When I came home, I was exhausted and upset. I saw lights on in the house. Relief washed over me because obviously that meant that Ricky was home. But when I opened the front door, the first thing I noticed was the dirt track inside. Ricky and I always remove our shoes when entering. I heard him talking, but it was just like Gordy the other night. Talking, but no talking. These old syllables, like someone mimicking the act of talking. This chilled me to the bone as I crept around the corner so I could see him in the den, standing there unusually stiff and straight, sort of swaying. "Honey," I called. His gibberish immediately ceased. His head turned, and I swear it was like he reached up and folded his skin over his face, like a sticker that has started to peel at the corner and that he smoothed back into place. I heard him say very clearly this time, "Honey?" I ran. I ran upstairs to the bedroom and slammed the door and locked it. I could hear him roaming around outside, and he occasionally called for me. I realized I dropped my phone in the hallway. I was too scared to go and grab it. Instead, I stayed hidden up here, listening to the sound of the TV downstairs. At one point, the news anchor said, "Reports of sunny weather coming up." And I heard Ricky's voice, clear and distinct. "Sunny weather coming up." Then he cleared his throat and called loudly, "Honey, reports of sunny weather coming up." Every so often he tried to come up with a new phrase. The last time he came upstairs, sobbing and yelling through the door, "What about Gordy?" What the fuck happened to Gordy? He laughed. He laughed, a weird high-pitched laugh that sounded just like a laugh from the woman on TV. But that wasn't his normal laugh. And he said, "Gordy's fine, honey. Gordy's fine." "My name's not Honey," I shouted back. "Call me by name. You know my name. It's Judy." "Open the door, Judy, honey. Judy, open the door." But my name is not Judy either. It's Claire. Judy is my mom's name. Whatever is down there wearing my husband's face is far, far too clever. The way it tried to quickly reassure me, and I know I have to call the police and tell them something is wrong, and that if they interview him, they'll see. He won't be able to answer correctly. They'll realize something's not right. I finally managed to creep out and grab my phone and sneak back in while he was watching television. But now, I managed to creep out and grab my phone and sneak back in while he watched television. I'm terrified because right after I scurried back in and locked the door, he must have heard me because he came up and he knocked. And I am chilled. I'm not sure if I could even convince the police of the danger now because this last time, after he said very politely, he knocked and he said, "Honey," he said it smugly, confidently. "Honey, open up. Everything's fine. Claire, honey, open a door." Well, well. To think, the one you love the most would often be the one to get you, and not in the way that you want. Who we. That was oddly creepy is an understatement for that one. Well, it is time to just look at another story. Because things get more grim from here. My father is a park ranger. He took me with him on a night shift. I should have listened to his rules. This is how the human mind works. When you're walking through a forest, you don't think too much. You let the silence surround you, feel the soft breeze, and branches crack under your feet. It's in our nature to yearn for such scenery, no matter how much we thrive in busy, concrete-soaked cities. Forests are always welcoming and refreshing to us. The air is clear and crisp. Daylight plays hide and seek through the tall branches. It's inspiring and beautiful. Sometimes, though, as you walk on your path, your mind begins to focus on small things. Noises, wind, shadows in the tree. Such silence can be both welcoming and unsettling. Depends on how you view it. Forests are double-sided coins. They hide you away from the tiring landscape of the city, but they expose you to another environment. You gotta realize something. You're not in control anymore because this is not your home. You can lie to yourself and build a house there, but you don't belong in a forest. You're merely a visitor. That's national parks for you. An illusion of being in control. The fake freedom you feel when you walk on those marked paths and camp in the square assigned to you. When you think the silence around you is peaceful, but the silence is an illusion. Visit the forest again, even when it's silent, is it really? It's not. Complete Absolute silence means death. Fear it. My father taught me that. He's been a park ranger since forever, really. I was never much of a fan of it, but especially most of the time when there's no service and the hikes are killing me, man. I'd rather enjoy nature by swimming in a lake or something. Why break your legs to end up to a high point just to see around a valley? Not to mention the animals, they were everywhere. And the insects always got on my nerves. But I guess that was one of the reasons why he started telling me scary stories from his shift. I never understood his love for the forest, but I kinda do now. Looking back, they were obviously made up, but to younger me, they seemed believable. I used to think he was brave for doing the night shift. But as I got older and more into horror, even if I didn't believe in his forest creatures anymore, I still liked the idea of spending the night in a small cabin, just for that case of adrenaline. When my father said he wanted to take me with him, I accepted immediately. I knew why he offered. See, over the past years, our relationship took a big hit. I guess I was growing up and he didn't know how to handle that. He was emotionally distant and seemed to repel any of my attempts to try to open up to him. In return, I'd become uninterested and irritable. In the words of my mother, this would have been a funny way or a fun way to bond, I guess. We arrived at the park around 9 p.m. and the shift started at 10 and ended at 6 a.m. His jeep pierced the darkness and ventured into the woods. I sighed and yawned, knowing that this was going to be a boring, boring night. The headlights flashed the trees, turning them white against the black sky. I'd never been on this route, but again, my visits to the park were rare. We drove for a while. Most of the time, people underestimate the size of national parks. It took us an hour and a half to get to the cabin, which wasn't even in the heart of the forest. I saw one single trace of humanity in the middle of nowhere. Tiny wooden cabin with flickering light bulbs and watchdogs. But before we even got out the car, my father stopped me. Listen, there's some instructions you need to follow. I know it may seem unimportant, but they're crucial. He handed me a piece of paper, a list of handwritten rules. At first they were ordinary. Don't go alone in the park. Don't leave food out, etc. I thought the rest of the rules had been put on there just to freak me out. Dad, I'm not 12 anymore. You can't freak me out with this shit. I'm not trying to. You wanted to come here with me, so act accordingly. What even is this? If you see a man without an arm, don't help him. We have all kind of weirdos around here. And this, if the whistling is near you, it means they're far. My father smiled, but his eyes didn't. Some of these are superstitious fellas. They're added up. It's more of a what if it's not going to happen to you. Here are the rules. Don't go out alone in the park. Always have a working contact device. Don't leave marked paths unless instructed to, and or without proper equipment. Don't leave food out and lock the trash bins. Always keep on the whistle and the bridge. If you see a man without an arm, do not help him. Your family is not in here. Remember, there is no reason for you to hear their voices from outside. Lock your car doors even when you are driving. Check the marks on the trees. There's only three types of marks, all triangles. Red, yellow, and green. Other marks are not ours, so do not follow them. If the whistling is near you, it means they're far. If it's far away, it means they're near. Beware of Did Blue. What is Did Blue? I asked. You know when you're out in the woods, my father's side, when you think what you hear is silence, but you realize there's dozens of sounds around you, from birds to crickets to leaves rustling? I replied with a yeah. That's because there's no such thing as silence, absolute silence. Never. There's always sound, movement, life. Did Blue is complete and utter silence. That's our code name for it. Deaf, including silence. Unnatural. Right. And when that happens, it won't. It's he said. But if it does, he paused, staring at the steering wheel. Then his head turned towards me. His eyes darted from mine to the window behind me. You leave. That being said, he got out the car and I followed. The cabin was dusty and cramped, and I could barely understand how he could spend 8 hours in here. He had a small TV, but it wasn't working. A desk and a mini fridge. You sit here all alone? I asked. Yeah. Why, does that freak you out? Don't you get bored? I said. Martin's post is 10 minutes away. Sometimes I just drive over. Nothing really happens out here anyway. My spot is pretty far from the campsites. I just have to patrol from time to time to make sure no one wanders off into the night. But that rarely happens. This is one of the wilder areas less explored. What? I said. You haven't explored it at all? His eyes sparkled. Wouldn't it be possible? So you don't know what's out there. That's the fun of it. You said you wanted adrenaline. There you go. I nodded. He opened a mini fridge and threw some orange juice at me. I mentioned I liked this brand once and he remembered. Maybe our relationship wasn't so bad. We sat next to each other in a small cabin, and he locked it. I'm not gonna lie to you, most of the time I just sleep. Literally nothing ever happens. So you really don't see any creatures out there? Like the ones you told me about when I was little? So you really didn't see any creatures out there? After an awkward silence, like the ones you told me about when I was little, I jokingly said. The only creature out there is my manager, and I'd rather face a million cryptids than talk to him. I laughed and leaned to look out the window. I can't see anything, just my reflection. Want me to dim down the light? Yeah, I said. He did, and darkness crept inside the tiny cabin. But compared to the polluted city, this cabin was on the hill. But after a little bit, we went to sleep. The cabin I had left this out was on a hill propped up by a tree, with a trap door and a ladder leading to our car. We could actually see above the tree line into the valley. We spent the first hours talking, somewhat around midnight, and I dozed off again. I didn't want to, but I caved in and fell asleep with my head on the desk. He woke me. He woke me up, and I rubbed my eyes in confusion. What time is it? I asked. I got a call from Martin. Wait, what? What? Who's? Wait, right? Who was Martin? I mumbled. The other one in the area. He says he got a call from the campsite and someone's missing. We need to go and search for him. We? Yeah, you're in the back suit, which means you're gonna be one of my rookies. I said okay. Yeah, you'll stay in the basement with me. My bad, y'all. Normally I do these stories very late at night, especially whenever I have the energy, but I love y'all enough to say I'm not going to be able to make it through this one. Every time I do try reading, my body shuts down, and I'm trying my best to stay awake. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to finish this one, but let me give you a story of my own. So, I just left the bathroom. Hello there. But the lights turn on and they turned off. Well, what I saw pretty much terrified me as long as I live. My favorite color is black, but that can also come up in very unsettling ways. I stared into the reflection because my eyes were red and puffy, and I have a weird mole apparently, or just a weird bump that I want to be rid of. When I say that my reflection stared back at me, oh yeah. Okay. I'm trying my best not to think about it, but it whispered something in my ear. You've been touched. There's not much you can do, but we're going to give you 2 days, whether you like it or not. I'm sitting here now, wondering where the time went, because I've been holed up in this room, remembering that I said I've been marked. I've been trying to ignore it, but when you love someone, when you anything akin to this, that's what it told me. It wanted to give me that love, and I felt that love back. How did I feel that love back? Well, the real me that is speaking isn't here, but he'll come later, just not now. But don't worry, I'm all that you need for that love and more. I'll be coming soon. Just please go to that mirror, and I'll see you then.